People, hello, how are we? Hopefully we're all doing well. I'm Tom. MMA, more specifically UFC, has had a huge rise recently. I say recently, the past sort of decade. It's really risen. There's a lot of reasons for that, and it started to make up some serious ground on the likes of boxing. So I want to talk about, can boxing maintain its dominance over MMA and UFC? Or is it looking like it's going to shift and MMA is going to overtake it? And with the introduction of the Riyadh season and Turkey Al Sheikh and things like that, can boxing maintain its lead and almost keep growing as it is? Now, there's no doubt it's not just a factor of MMA doing really well, but also boxing being its own worst enemy. We have seen an absolutely massive kind of drop in the fights we want to see. The fights we want to see just not happening, going and miss, or happening way past their sell-by date. Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, things like that, plenty of examples. And that's what UFC kind of always said it wouldn't have. And boxing has had, or did have, for a very long time, making it, like I say, its own worst enemy, allowing boxing politics to get in the way and stop these matchups. So with its viewership almost declining, boxing has really struggled to counteract that by grasping the attention of the younger audience. They've all gone to MMA, and it's because, as I say, we're not seeing the fights we want to see. It's too long build up or whatever it is, and it's seen a decline in its viewership. It's older. Its audience it's got is an aging. It's got an aging audience. They get a bit older. They're getting out of it, and it hasn't got a coming through younger audience. They all went to MMA, which meant that UFC was the go-to place for all these younger fight fans. That's where they go to get their fighting fix. MMA's got longer rounds, it's perhaps faster, and it's a more encompassing fight. Boxing's just punching, whereas MMA and UFC, it's a more encompassing fight. It's got grappling, kicking, all these things, which also mean that the styles make for perhaps more unpredictable outcomes. Now, of course, you still have favourites and stuff like that, but sometimes you're watching boxing going, you just know how this is going to go. Whereas UFC, you don't often see that all the time. Sometimes you do, of course, but perhaps the styles make for more unpredictable matchups is what I'm trying to say, coupled with longer rounds and faster pace. It's got its edge. And I'll come back to what I said before. Boxing really doesn't do itself any favours. It's got so much controversy. It's got awful judging at times, really, really poor scoring metrics. I've been over this so many times. I think the scoring metrics in boxing are just so super flawed, making it hard to not only understand. You're looking at going, how do you score fights? I don't get this. It's hard to understand, but also then makes it annoying to watch because the fights you're watching, there's no clear-cut outcome. It's just robbery after every single fight. Fury lost to Usyk, robbery. Second time he lost, robbery. Beterbiev lost to Bivol lost to Beterbiev rather. I had Bivol winning, but everyone's screaming robbery. It wasn't that. Even on the Misfits team, I think KSI beat Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury was given the win. And that's what makes it so boring, annoying to watch, is the controversy around awful scoring metrics, bad judging, and that's what makes it annoying. It doesn't do itself any favours. It just undermines the sport, and it's another issue is the promoters. It's the same there. You've got these promotions that are fighting for control over fighters and boxers, and when it comes to fights, they want, my guy's the A side, I want this, I want that, and they're fighting for outcomes, which makes it really difficult to know who's fighting who, when they're fighting, if they're gonna fight, and it takes away from the sport massively, and we're seeing less of that with the introduction of Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia, but for a long while, it was that. Fury AJ, I do think Fury ducked AJ, but I don't even think really it was that much down to Fury and AJ. It was Frank and Eddie, and they massively undermines the sport. What it makes for is a really disjointed viewing experience. Fans almost have to pick a promotion. Are you Eddie Hearn, or are you Frank Warren? Are you Ben Shalom? Are you Matchroom? Are you Queensbury? Are you Boxer? And that's the UK. Obviously, you've got Golden Boy. Is it Gold Star Promotions as well? You know what I mean? You've got these, like I say, disjointed promotions that you almost have to pick a side, basically. And it makes for a really disjointed viewing experience. And as I say, detracts from the sport. And it has got better with the introduction of Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia, but it's still some way off the UFC, the unified structure, the one platform, the one promotion and belt. It's some way off that structure that just makes it so easy to follow, so easy to know what's going on and who ranks where, and the fights that are happening. It's also worth mentioning the refusal to modernise in boxing. UFC has leveraged social media, digital platforms to build hype around the fights or the fighters, and they get a following around it. Boxing just relies so much on its traditional route, which I love, right? I get it, it's great. But it relies so much on it that coming through the Olympics and things like that. But this just means that, there's just not as much of a fan base for them. And this is why boxers initially hated things like Misfits, because people with a following are coming in and earning more money. And so, because they ultimately, it's an entertainment sport and they've got the entertainment behind them. They haven't gone the traditional route per se. And it's that refusal to modernise. And we're definitely starting to see boxing starting to adapt, but it's almost like they've been so slow to do this. So the surge in MMA and the popularity in it, in UFC especially, because of its ability to keep up with the times, put on high-profile events that we want to see, and boxing's lack of this is what's led to the younger audience going the way of MMA. And as the older audience are sort of departing, there's been a huge drop. To answer the question at the start, I do think boxing is now catching up with UFC and MMA. I think with the introduction of Riyadh season, Turkey Al-Sheikh, and bringing the promotions together, we are now starting to see the fights we want to see when we want to see them, at the right time. And that's fantastic. And it means boxing is growing at the same rate as UFC. I'd actually say yes. Maybe even a touch faster, but certainly similar rates. We are now seeing that. And now we're seeing the promotions like Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn signing with DAZN, which is a streaming platform that everyone can get access to pretty much globally. And it's a far more interactive viewing experience. They put out polls as you're watching the events, asking you who you think is going to win. You can, comment on it and reply to comments, have conversations with people as you're watching. You can go back and watch it on catch up rather than having to rely on Sky, where you can't. It's not interactive. There's no kind of catch or anything like that. DAZN's got that, and it's this adapting to the time, going with streaming platforms. Initially, again, like go and watch when Frank's reaction when Eddie first signed with DAZN, shitting all over it. Now he's signed with it because he's realised you got to adapt with the time. It's a bit of an interesting one, really, because we've never really seen competition between these two sports as intense as it is now. Whereas now they're both thriving, really, and kicking off. But I don't think it has to be a competition per se. I think there's plenty of space in the combat crowd for both sports. I love both. I prefer boxing, but I also love UFC. And I love watching UFC. And I understand that they're not the same. You know what I mean? I can watch them both, but that doesn't mean I have to pick one. Rugby league and rugby union, they're not the same. It doesn't mean I have to pick one. I can enjoy both. It's the same. MMA, UFC, and boxing. I can watch both. I can enjoy both. I don't have to pick one or the other. It's not like promotions, and I like that. I think there's plenty of space in the combat sports crowd for both sports. And as a fan, as somebody who's done boxing, done MMA, done these sports, I hope they can keep working together almost, learning from each other, bouncing off of each other, working together and improving both sports retrospectively, relatively, together improving the combat sports space. I think it's super important, and that's what I'm looking forward to, hopefully going forward. People, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have I missed the mark? Is UFC well overtaking boxing, or vice versa, whatever it is? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, people. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. You know how YouTube works, people. Peace.